Welcome to another episode of Your Schools. I'm your host, Dianne Parker, and we are joined today by Greg Upham. He is the Superintendent of School District 2. And Greg, we want to thank you so much for stopping by the studio today.
Well, Dianne, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we are talking today about the pandemic. We want to look at this from a historical perspective because really, let's face it, so much has changed. It's kind of been a moving target over the past few years. But we want to know what has changed big picture, what has worked for the schools, what might never go back to being the same. We want to know all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the unexpected. What would you say big picture? Because I know you have been at the head of everything.
You know, it's, I don't know if I've been asked that battery of questions, Probably the mainstay was doing everything that we possibly could to stay in live instruction. Yep. That's been the mainstay. At the same time, we offered a robust remote setting 2 years ago. We still have a robust remote setting now. I think we've gotten better at the remote pieces. That will be forever changed. I think an appreciation for school. When Governor Bullock placed us into quarantine for that period of time, and I think all of us remember what that was like. And I remember seeing the email coming on a Sunday morning. I was on the phone actually with our board chair, and it came. We anticipated that it might come, but then it came, and I had no idea what chain of events were going to trigger. Just the known, unknown change. It's hard to explain.
Right. I mean, looking back to that time period and getting that email and saying, like, we have to do something and the action has to happen now. And, people didn't know really about, coronavirus and what was happening from the health perspective yet. So I bet that was a lot for you just personally going through that and making those big decisions for the schools.
Mr. Felton and I had been discussing just what was happening, watching it on the West Coast. We had the opportunity to see what was happening in Seattle, and a lot of the issues they were dealing with was that mass outbreak in the retirement facilities and the tragedies that were happening with lives. And so it was driving some of the energy and just trying to learn, what are we dealing with? And I've always been the type of person that reaches out to those who know more than I do. And in this case, there were, that was going on. And so John and I had been talking back and forth. Do you think we'll close schools? Do you think, what's the community going to do? What is all this? And then all of a sudden that email came from Governor Bullock, and then it was all hands on deck, game on.
Right. So early on, what were some of the first steps that you took? What were the changes that we all saw right away in the schools?
One of the biggest changes was that when we went into the quarantine from Governor Bullock was getting food to our students. That was a big one. And how are we going to do that? Well, we had some work that we were following in Washington, and I had a friend out there that was a superintendent, and they seemed to be about 3 months ahead of us. And so was able to visit with him a couple of different times. But it was making sure that our students who relied on the schools for their food, was that we would have the food available. Then the next step was getting instructional materials out to the families, and that was in the thousands, right? Because we're roughly right at 17,000, a little less than 17,000 students, and about 3,000 employees that are part and full time. And so it was getting the classrooms for the most part, supported and outlined so that we could start to do this to the best of our ability. So food was first, and then instructional materials into the hands of people that were in remote settings.
Right. And remind us what that was like for the food. I mean, I think I remember some, people could pick up food at the front of the school, drive through. Tell us about that.
We had drop sites.
Yeah.
Sodexo had, and they've done a great job. Sid Taylor is the person in charge of Sodexo, and they did a really nice job of putting food into whatever vehicle we could find, vans and trucks, and then we would let the parents know that food would be available to them in the mornings for breakfast, in the afternoons for lunches, and that they could go to the schools at this time and take their lunches. And then, one of the other things that was concerning was we have a lot of food pantries in our schools, especially our high schools, because we have homeless students, we have students who have food deprivation issues and those types of situations. So our food pantries were being hit hard, and we had a lot of volunteers come forward and say, hey, let's restock these food pantries, because sometimes that was the only food that some of our students were getting.
Right, right. The community support has really been huge.
It really has. It
Yeah.
was really amazing.
Yeah, that's an amazing undertaking that you guys were able to get food to everyone who needed it, the breakfast and the lunch. I mean, those families really depend on it.
Yeah, they really did.
Yeah, and we are recording this in March of 2022, and I know some of the school lunch programs are still being funded federally. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%
Yeah,
actually.
that's what I thought.
So
Okay.
we've shown an increase in the number of students that take part in lunch and breakfasts, and so that's been a good thing.
Yeah, a nice relief for some of the parents out there and the families, because I know people have faced job losses and things like that during the pandemic. So talk to us about some other changes that have happened at the schools throughout the pandemic. I mean, I know I've heard from my kid some things that were different in the classroom, like carpets were removed and just the sanitary measures that take place every day, you know, custodial things that you had to think about.
Yeah, so if you've been in an elementary classroom, sometimes they're museums, right? And I say that endearingly, because they're welcoming environments, and then some classrooms have a lot of clutter, and so we knew that social distancing and physical distancing was a key part to the best of our ability. I remember having a conversation with Governor Bullock saying, social distancing in schools is an oxymoron. I mean, we'll do the best we can. So, you know, we sent out to our teachers, hey, remove everything that you possibly can other than what you're going to need to teach with. And we had storage units available, and so they started to do that. And then any place that would create a situation where we couldn't clean as well as we wanted to, then we asked for those materials to be removed. So, you know, any type of throw carpets, anything like that. So it was very sterile environments.
Right.
And then we increased the airflow in all the schools that we could increase. I think that's pretty much all of them. And we offered hand washing stations and disinfecting stations. And then we cohorted groups of students. So, you know, if you were in a kindergarten class and we only wanted you to mix with your kindergartners, and then we made sure that lunches were in the classrooms. And then in the middle schools and high schools, we altered the instructional schedules to block scheduling, where we would reduce the number of rotations in a day and in a week, and then we alternated those rotations for every other week, so that, you know, one group of students would stay fairly close together. And then we did contact tracing and isolation and quarantine. Our administrators had to, because there were just enough cases where county health couldn't stay with them. And so it was quite an undertaking. As I think about this, I'm sure I'm leaving 90% of it out, but those were some of the big issues that we were going through. And then just the social emotional that we experienced when we were in quarantine, when the Governor Bullock placed us there. I think the piece was we don't want to do that again if we don't have to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I know. Like, people need contact and they
Yep.
want to see their friends. What kind of feedback have you gotten this year since the mask mandate has been lifted from the schools? Have families appreciated it? Have you heard? I mean, I'm sure you've heard a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think both ways, right? There's always the concern of you know, transmission of the disease, and then there's obviously the people who are concerned that masking inhibited students and inhibited people's choice and those types of things. For the most part, I think it's been very supportive and very positive. It's been difficult, but I think for the most part, people appreciated being in school and at the same time trying our best to reduce the transmission of the virus.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been in the schools this year a lot. I've been subbing a little bit at School District 2, and it has been fun to see the kids interact. I mean, sometimes you'll hear them say, you know, on that first day when the masks were lifted, some of them were so surprised, like, oh, I see you without your mask. This is what you look like. You know, just changes for them. Mm-hmm. So it's been kind of fun to see their smiles.
You know, Diane, probably the biggest, just in kind of re-answering your question or readjusting to it, for me, probably at least one of them was in the 2021 school year when we were trying to decide whether we were going to go back to school or not. We had positioned ourselves to do all that, but I remember leaving my house, I can still see myself, and had made the decision that we're going to go back, and we're going to take a run at this. And I asked myself two questions: will you be able to live with yourself if a child dies, or if you lose a staff member? And we had the courage. I think parents and teachers and staff members, we had the courage to try to do it. And with each week that we gained a little more confidence and and I really compliment this entire community for the start of school in 2021, which really propelled us to stay in school that year and have the confidence to move on. It just was, right. It's scary saying it out loud, actually.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's significant, and I know like the choices to keep the kids in the school it makes a difference. I mean, I know I've heard from studies that the kids who have done online learning have fallen behind a little bit. And so to have that option here in Billings of being in the classroom all year has been pretty amazing, I think, for people to take advantage of. And just the fact that you could organize it and put everything into place to still keep people safe is really significant. But also offering that online option for those who have serious medical conditions was so important too.
Yeah, we tried to do the best of both worlds. I compliment our efforts. I think we learned from it. Like I said earlier, I think we're better at the remote side.
Yep.
But we know in person is really the key.
Yeah, it really is. What has it been like for you throughout this from the political standpoint? I mean, I know there are very polarizing opinions on this. How has that been, just navigating everything that comes your way?
Well, I think we've had a good strong board. I have open communication with them, both as a board and individually. A lot of the decisions that were made throughout the process was made collectively, informing them that, hey, this is the direction we want to go. So that's helped a lot, having a board that's up to date on everything that's going on. And we didn't really get caught up in the politics of certain things, following as much of the data as we could get on our hands, talking with as many of the experts and the professionals in the field and in the areas of what we were doing, talking with our people on the ground, our school nurses. Rachel Coombs, who's our department chair for our school nurses, she's been absolutely phenomenal, a great liaison. She serves on one of the committee with all of our pediatricians. I meet with Riverstone Health weekly. I'm in constant contact with Dr. Koo throughout this process, and had listened in on the Unified Health Command, and just being involved with that, just immersed in it, right. Really helped as it guided decisions. And so really didn't become political. Yeah. It just became, this is what we have to do.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Just getting the information, being able to make sound decisions. Okay, so what about some of the things that were implemented in the classroom, or just things, I guess, that you have heard from teachers? Like, has it been hard for them, for instance, for a kindergarten teacher to teach sounds and phonetics? Like, what sound does the letter A make with masks on throughout the year? What did you hear from the teachers?
Really, on the first day when we went back in 21-22, I was at Poly Drive on the first day of school, and the teacher said, "Hey, we can do this. We can. The students will adjust, and we can do this." And I think they've done as good a job as they can. I went to Rimrock Learning Center, where we have our preschool. Some of our preschools with students with significant needs, and they had their masks on. And there's some a lot of medically fragile students in that area, so it's really important. And I was being introduced to one of the little boys, and he had a hard time seeing me and listening to me. And so it's challenging. It was challenging. And but I think for the most part we've done the best we can. Right. So I wouldn't say it was easy by any means, but I think they've really worked hard at trying to get a clear face shield when they can, and those types of situations, and getting some distancing and doing the best they can. So it hasn't been easy.
Right, for sure. I know there's been other changes at the school. Just looking back, I know snack time has been a little bit different, which can be kind of a big deal for those younger classrooms. I know individually packaged snacks, just the teachers have done so much, and we should probably just thank them for everything that they do, because I know helping kindergartners undo individual snack packages takes a lot of extra time in the classroom.
Yeah, everything has been more difficult, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, I think all of us we're saying we don't want to be replaced. We don't want to be placed in a remote setting.
Right.
So we just kind of done it, and our people are tired, just like our community and our society. But they've just answered the bell every time, and yeah, they've had significant changes to deal with.
Yep. What are some of the things that we would see if we walked into a school today that would be different, that are still going on, like custodial measures or things like that?
Yeah, you hopefully you'd see more hand washing than what we've done in the past. That's one of the things that it's a universal that we have to continue to work with.
Yeah.
We do. You'll probably see rooms that have less clutter, just so there's more space in them.
Right.
You'll probably see there's probably still some cohorting that's going on, just out of saying that we're not going to release all 200 students at one time.
Right.
You know, you'll see some more just some cohorting, but really, if you go into the schools right now, they're going to look pretty normal. They're going to, they're fighting to get back to normalcy, and
Right.
are you going to see that?
I've seen a few water fountains still covered up, and those aren't, they don't encourage students to use those, but there's other options like water fill stations, and the kids all bring their own water bottles now, so those are some changes.
Yeah, and plus, an article came out in the Great Falls Tribune this week about the lead testing from the state, so we've been involved with that, and there's some of those fixtures that are closed off is because there may have been a lead that was higher than the drinking water would allow, and we haven't had the opportunity to go in and replace the hydration stations with them. But we have a lot of schools that have hydration stations in them. People are doing a much better job of hydrating, really.
Yeah.
And so, you'll see more of the bottle fill than you will see the drinking fountain. So,
I think that is really a great point. I mean, kids are focusing more on hydration and how important water is, because they have that water bottle, they fill it up a couple times every day. And before that, they probably weren't taking a lot of breaks to go out to the water fountain.
Yeah, exactly.
So, some of these changes have been really, really great. What has it been like for you being able to fill positions, like when teachers have been out sick with the pandemic, substitute teachers, shortages, things like that?
Well, we reduce the number of professional development sessions that we provide, which pull staff out. So we did as much internally to not disrupt the classroom environment. We increased our substitute pay using the ESSER funding to $125 and $150 a day, which helped immensely. And then we put as much COVID leave support in as we possibly could, so that if an employee contracted COVID, that they could stay home, and that leave wouldn't be taken out of their leave. It would be out of COVID leave, which basically said, stay home if you're sick, so you don't come to school and infect others. And we were very aggressive with those measures, and it absolutely helped us. Omicron was some touch and goes for a while. I know I was a crosswalk guard.
Yes.
at Alkali Creek.
Okay.
And we had other central office staff in the buildings supporting any way that they possibly could. We had building administrators who were covering 1 and 2 classrooms.
Yeah.
We had teachers covering for their colleague. We did everything possible to not close a school. And I couldn't be more proud of that. I mean, it was all hands on deck. If we couldn't find enough substitutes, then we just all threw in together to make sure that we kept that school going.
Right, I know. I've subbed in a few scenarios, one at Rose Park I remember, and I wasn't sure if I could take the job. It was just an afternoon one. And I got there and the classroom was already with the other first grade teacher. So they had already come up with a solution, and then, they just tell the subs, hey, if you can fill it, come, like even if you're a few minutes late. So I know that you guys have lots of measures in place, and you've handled a lot this year, so good job for everything that you've been able to coordinate.
Yeah, I think the best thing to say is, like I said, it continues to be, but our numbers are down significantly was all hands on deck. Didn't matter what position you held in the district. If a school needed you, then you went.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing how everyone really pulled together and supported our kids.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
You know, I say this a lot, but I just admire the courage of our community. You had mentioned earlier when we were visiting prior to the broadcast that you'd had a family member in Colorado that was out of school for an entire year.
Yeah.
And I hear that a lot. That was the 21-22 school year when a lot of large communities, large districts chose to stay in a remote for the year or a large part of the year. It just took a lot of courage by all of us to do that, which then launched us this year. It wasn't even a question whether we were going to be in school or not.
Yeah.
And so I think that meant a lot to the workforce being able to stay in place. I think it meant a lot for students with their social emotional, so they could see their friends, so they could interact, so the activities could continue. I think we, like I've said this already, but we improved in some of the remote. We're better at remote, and that's a good thing.
Yep.
Because we'll always have students who will be in remote for health issues or significant mental health issues or those types of things. So, you look back on 2 years, and I'm sure there's a million other issues, but that's what sticks out the most to me is we had the courage to go.
Yeah, I mean, that courage was amazing, and I commend you for doing that and just leading this and making everything work so that our students could be in school and learn and be with their friends and around their teachers. It's been really great for the students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. Well, thank you, Greg Upham, for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, we'll see you next time on Your Schools.